Hi, Dr. Evans. Hi, everybody.
Good evening, Mr. Frandino. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. I wanted to check audio. Good evening. Well, we'll get started in about 5 minutes. I just wanted to check on things. So welcome, everyone. I guess it's just turning 6 o'clock. And it's good to see so many participants. And I think we have a lot of information to present. And I'll get right to the PowerPoint presentation. And then we'll have a question and answer period. Courtney, is there something you also want to introduce as part of the protocol for this meeting?
Hi, everybody. You can ask questions by navigating to the bottom of your screen. There's a chat icon, and you can put them in the chat. I would encourage you to wait until Mr. Frandino has completed his presentation. As we said, there's quite a lot of information to go through, and it is very likely that he will answer your question in the course of his presentation.
Thank you. All right, we'll get started on the presentation. So to begin with, again, this is Parent Information Night where we're going through hold on one moment. There we go. A little bit about this presentation for our reopening plans. First of all Center for Disease Control, New York State Department of Health, and New York State Education Department regulations and guidance. They're the foundation for our planning. They're the go-to place for the information that we're using to develop the plan. This presentation is also based on our district reopening plan. It was submitted to the state 13 days ago. And this presentation also has specific information related to the Chase building that might be different in terms of some of the specifics that they're doing at other buildings. Reopening plan development. Our district and building specific reopening planning was conducted by a committee of over 30 people at the elementary level. And then there was also a secondary committee that developed the plans for the middle school and for the high school. It was facilitated and refined by the elementary principals and the elementary assistant principals. And then we passed it on and it was further refined by central administration and the various department leaders and directors. Priorities. So the priority for all of our plans, I tried to boil them down to just some single words. Safety is our #1 priority, and that includes all of the steps that we will be taking to help mitigate any spread of the virus, which is kind of our big reason for even having a reopening plan. But safety in general is also part of what we're always doing. Socialization is another aspect of what we've realized when we're doing remote learning, that one big thing that is difficult to accomplish is feeling that we're attending to our students appropriately in terms of them socializing with other students, them socializing with other adults, and even the adults themselves socializing with each other. Encapsulated in that is much of the reflection and studies that we are doing in terms of being an anti-racist school and taking actions that are anti-racist. And then the third priority for us is really instruction. That's what's meant by engagement. So all types of things that engage students in the learning process. I think by now many of you have already heard about our cohort model, so I'll quickly go through this. But if you're in cohort A, that's attending 2 days and 3 days remotely. And the 2 days would be Monday and Tuesday for cohort A. Cohort B is the same, but kind of a mirror image. It's attending in person on Thursday, Friday, and remotely the other days. And yes, this also means that Wednesday for everyone is a remote day. It's a day when they plan to do a deep cleaning of the building, and then again, they would do it on the weekend. Cohort C will be attending all 4 of those attendance days, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, but they will also be remote on Wednesday. And cohort D is an option that parents and guardians can choose, and that means you would be remote all 5 of the days. Student cohort designation. We're considering the survey information that is due on Saturday. Also siblings, we would make in the same cohort, so they're attending on the same days. And there's consideration made for efficient bus runs. Here is a visual that might help you also see the in-person and remote days for the different days of the week for the different cohorts. And again, this presentation is being recorded and will be presented on the web page. And I imagine we may even send something like this home to all of our parents so everyone can keep track of it. Now, to some Chase specific items. The overall picture you might want to view is we're going to split Chase into 3 schools within the larger building. And I'm going to run through this. Again, you'll be able to look back and check it out. I did my best to take some pictures. But first of all, for example, we have kindergarten, first grade, Mrs. Crowfoot's class, and Mrs. Franzone's class. She will have the grade 3, 5, 12, 1, 1 class. They would all use what we call the flagpole entrance. It's been our standard entrance for everyone, at least for a couple of years. Let me move on. This is an interior photo that may not be familiar to many of you, but at the very end of that hallway is that flagpole entrance. And the students would come down this hallway, kindergarten, first grade, Mrs. Crowfoot's class, and Mrs. Franzone's class are all along this hallway, hallway A, and they turn the corner and down to hallway B. That would be one region of the building. The second and third grade would use a different entrance. They would enter the main lobby entrance. Security is going to be in the lobby now. We're moving them from the office out into the lobby, and they would go in the lobby entrance, and if they take an immediate left, they have what we call the green hallway because it has the green wall right now. And all of the second grade and third grade students, the classrooms are in that hallway. That would be a second region of the building. And then finally, grade 4 and grade 5, they will use what we're calling the gate entrance. And they would come in the entrance right by Miss Rubin's office, and all of their classrooms are right up that hallway. So those are the 3 regions of the school. In this way, we will minimize the interaction between students, at least within those pods. They're often referred to as pods. Similarly, the staff will be divided into 3 separate units. We will have very minimal crossover, but we will have some staff, for example, specials teachers. We'll be seeing students from each of the pods. We may also have some people delivering and picking up mail at the different pods. And I chose to put in here the other detail that as much as possible, meetings even between teachers, parent-teacher conferences would be done virtually. So we'll really try to minimize the interaction. We'll say a little bit about screening. I'm trying to run through kind of what you might experience or what might exist in a day at school. All students, staff, and visitors must have their temperature screened as part of entering a building, each visit. Probably even if you came back twice in the same day. Anytime you come in, we should have it so easy by the time we start that it's not a problem to take your temperature, and your temperature must be under 100 degrees. This is a sign that we currently have out in the lobby. All persons must complete a health questionnaire as part of being granted access to the building. You must be able to respond no to all of the questions. And we are also arranging for an online QR code that you would use as you enter the building, and you can actually fill out the questionnaire and do it before you enter the building and then be granted access to the building. Now, I do have the questions that are on this questionnaire so we can run through them. The questionnaire asks, have you been COVID-19 symptomatic in the past 14 days, tested positive in the past 14 days, had close contact with a confirmed or suspected case in the past 14 days, have you been under quarantine and not cleared to return to work? And the 5th one is, have you traveled to a travel advisory state in the last 14 days? And for that last one, also realize the list of travel advisory states for New York State. I think they just added 3 states the other day. It's a pretty comprehensive list, and it changes in time, so you'd have to check it. We'll try to have a most recent one to have available for people to consider. But that's an important one that people are not thinking of. If you have a vacation plan between now and September, we're wondering, it may be something you're not thinking of, that you actually, when you return, you're supposed to quarantine before you enter school. All individuals, students, parents, and staff should monitor your body temperature and your general health condition really every morning before you come to school. When in doubt, it'll be best to keep your student home or for you to stay home. A big thing along these lines is we're probably going to notice that if you don't self-monitor, and it could end up being that it causes you more difficulty in your day than you would like if we end up having to call and have a student go home. So keep that in mind. And then there was something else I wanted to mention here, but I'm juggling between the two setups. Well, it's just the idea that if you think your student has a fever, we naturally assume we don't want to mask that fever and have the student still proceed to school. So we are going to screen every student every morning when they come in. And then it may be common to check different students if they appear sick later on. So we just want to point that out. And I know it's been mentioned in many of our meetings that we want to make sure we stress that it's really all for the better if we're not doing that. Yeah, here it is. So I know you've heard we're all in this together, but seriously, by following all the guidelines we're making, it's possible to open our schools. And if we keep following them, we'll be able to stay open. And if we keep following, we'll eventually even be able to open things up more. Let's go to the specifics of mask and face coverings. Students and staff are required to wear face masks whenever they're on a school bus or district property. At least 2 mask breaks will be given each day with appropriate social distancing. I anticipate even more. We'll talk about mask breaks in a minute. Students may wear their own appropriate face covering, and the district will supply face masks when necessary. Here's an example of not wearing a face mask correctly. It's even a pet peeve of mine. If your nose is peeking out or totally uncovered, or if you keep having to tug your mask back up over your nose because it keeps slipping down, then it will be best if you figure something out so that that doesn't happen. Proper wearing would be as such, I think. You know, over the nose. It didn't even seem to fog my glasses today. I was wearing the mask for quite a while, but we want to make masks cool. We want everyone's help to stay open. We really want to be open. And one way to do this is to just go ahead and embrace the masks. We recommend you start practicing mask wearing now with your student. Many students are not used to it. They haven't been out of the house a whole lot, some more than others. I know in my family, I have 3 children. My 17-year-old has been out much more, but I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they maybe get out once every 2 weeks. They're not used to it. In fact, I saw it in their eyes. My 12-year-old son, I had him put his mask on, and we went in, I think it was Home Depot or somewhere, and I could tell, oh, he thinks this is strange. He thinks this is like being in a spacesuit on the moon. So whatever, I don't know what experience your student may have with it, but practice wearing it correctly, but then also practice for duration. I don't think we would go as long as 2 hours without having a mask break, but it shouldn't be a big deal to wear a mask for 30 minutes at a time. Let's keep going. Fixed distance position. So that's a name I made up. I like it. We have fixed distance position locations marked within each classroom. The desks are spaced and it's marked where they belong, and it's actually in excess of 6 feet by a little bit. The fixed distance position will be used when students eat can't eat with a mask on. And in order to take it off, you do have to have the 6-foot position. So at times when we will have a mask break or eat, the students would be asked to be at their fixed distance position, and only a staff member, classroom teacher, lunch monitor would announce that it's okay, we're going to now have a mask break. And then the students could remove their mask as long as they stay in their location. They have a break for whatever time is deemed necessary, probably 5 minutes or less, and then they would return to wearing the mask. Here is an example. This is Mrs. Oakley's classroom. If you count the stacking cups, the large stacking cups, there are 10 of them. And in fact, there was more room if we needed to get probably 12 students in there. Now, to help you interpret this a little also, if we're talking 3rd grade cohort A, they could sit where the yellow stacking cups are. 3rd grade cohort B, when they come in, they would sit in the other desks. So every other desk is 6 feet apart, and actually the stacking cups themselves, especially with the diagonal created, is a little longer than 6 feet. It's probably closer to 7 feet. But there's an example. Not every classroom is going to be able to set up just like this, but we will end up having them and marked for a fixed position. Social distancing and other protocols. Okay, hallways, same thing. As much as possible, we're going to try to keep some hallways one-way traffic. That's why security will be out in the lobby. As you know, we don't normally even walk through the lobby. But if they're out there, we can create some more one-way traffic space by having the lobby we can walk through the lobby. All student movement within the building must be escorted by a staff member. We will not any longer say that Joey could walk down to the nurse's office, or that we have someone reporting, carrying the absentee notes or any attendance information down to the office. We won't have students free roaming the building. Specials will be held within the classroom, so the teacher will go to the classroom, and if whatever they're doing in any special involves aerobic activity, we will have to hold that outdoors and maintain a 12-foot distance for the aerobic activity. We're actually measuring that out a bit today. We're thinking about using field marking paint out on the grass, but also blacktop paint for the blacktop areas, so that if they hold the class out there, they can make sure we have a 12-foot distance. But otherwise, even for physical education, Mrs. Coney has been pointing out to me there's a lot she can do that she feels is more academic in nature and does not require aerobic activity. Hygiene and cleaning practice. So this one's got a lot of words in it, but in general, upon entering the building, really before doing almost anything, it's a before and after with the hand washing and sanitizer. So as much as if we're breaking for recess or there's some free time in the classroom, we would do hand washing or use of sanitizer. The teacher very often, although I bet many students will have some of their own, but the teacher can walk around and squirt some sanitizer in each student's hands, and they could use it. Proper respiratory hygiene. That's the face mask. Even the use of tissue, though, for blowing your nose or coughing or spitting something out, as well as proximity. How close are you to people when you're talking? How long are you close to them? That's duration. I think I noticed that the other day. I had a doctor's appointment, and I could tell the doctor noticed he hit like his 10-minute mark, and he was ready to be done. He's trying to not stay for a duration. And it was also mentioned that the volume of our breath, if we're yelling or many times doing various things that students or staff may be doing, we want to consider that the volume of your voice may impact breath. The whole thing is to just get everybody to understand that that's a major way that the virus spreads. Cleaning and disinfecting of classrooms. We're going to arrange that after every time lunch is eaten in the classroom, it will be vacated by the students, probably in the form of a recess outdoor break when we can, and then a general cleaning of the classroom will occur. A deep clean of the building, I mentioned once before, will happen on Wednesdays and on the weekend. The other thing is that high-touch surfaces and restrooms, we intend to have our custodian on a regular schedule to just basically keep moving and keep hitting spots. When I mentioned before, after for the sanitizer, before and after the bathroom also. What happens when a student is discovered with symptoms? I think this is a major question everyone has. First of all, we're following and reading the CDC guidelines over and over again to make sure we have this down correctly, what they would like us to do. So the first step is immediately separate, whether it's a staff or a student. If it's staff, they may just leave the building. If it's a student, we separate them to an isolation location. So we have arranged to have, I guess it's 3, but the one is very large. It's actually rooms 118 and 120. If you're familiar with Chase, it used to be the cafeteria. It's completely empty. One side, we are actually going to get ready, even if we have to relocate a classroom, because that's part of what has to happen until the room is cleaned. But we can also have another side. We have 3 different spots to isolate a student, and they will be in proximity to the nurse and able to leave the building easily and quickly without having to march through the building. Individuals with symptoms need to be transported, so we're either going to transport them, but first we're going to hope that we can contact the parents and have them picked up. But whatever way, depending on the severity of the symptoms, they will be transported to the appropriate location. And whatever region they were most active in, if they were from a classroom, for example, and they'd been there all day, we will be removing the students from that classroom, and the classroom will be closed off and cleaned before it is used again. It will be cleaned and disinfected. The students that are removed, however, they will continue with their day. They don't all need to be transported home. They don't all need to be isolated. What notifications are made if that happens? Well, notifications will be made if we have an official diagnosis of COVID-19. We will immediately notify health officials, staff, all families of any diagnosed case. Contact tracing, that actually could start immediately just in case. Better to start it sooner. We'll have a better idea of where the person was and who was in contact. Individuals with close contact will be informed, but all confidentiality will be maintained in accordance with HIPAA and the Americans with Disabilities Act. All New York State Department of Health and CDC guidance will be followed. That's where we go to find out what we need to do. Here's a picture of the space I was telling you that we've completely emptied out at this point. We're going to have some furniture in there at appropriate spacing and so on if it needs to be used at some point. But this is what used to be the Chase cafeteria. It's room 118 and 120. There was a question in one of the sessions. I had an advantage of having been able to take notes from the prior 2 elementary sessions. Medication will be administered by the school nurse. Either she will go to the student or a student would come down with a staff member, but we will make the arrangements. There will be no interruption of that service. All right, arrival and dismissal procedures. The first thing is that we must keep a lower density of students on the bus. And in order to do that, with the buses we have available, we will have a staggered bus schedule. I have not seen exactly what that will look like for us yet, because until we hear back from the survey about the number of students and where they are that are intending to take the bus, we can't really make a good plan for that yet. But it could mean that buses make multiple runs, that they would drop students, they would disinfect the bus, and then they go on the second run. Students will dismiss using the same entrances and exits that they've used when they came in the morning. Tardy students would all enter at the main lobby, very much like we usually do. And for pickup, parents will remain in the car We're going to arrange a system of radioing into the building, who's ready to be picked up, and we will bring the student out to you. And, bus pickup and transport is only to the primary residence right now. We don't have an ability to make a plan that has a fully loaded bus, but then also on Tuesdays and another student, or on any particular day, a student has a note and needs to go to a different location. We cannot do that right now, but as we get started, I view that maybe that would be something we find we have an ability to do, but we won't know until we get started. So for the time being, we can only go to and from primary residence for people. Having said that, make sure your primary residence information is updated. If you happen to use the same bus stop as another individual, or it's a sequential bus stop, it's probably not much of an issue because it'll be the same bus. But without getting into details of all of that, you see where that goes. Also, school messenger account. You can download the app and create your account if you don't have one already. But any official notifications at least will come through School Messenger. Also, your emergency contact information, it's now in your hands on the School Tool Parent Portal. If you need assistance with that, you can contact the main office and we can get you some assistance getting on and adjusting your account. But this is where it's kind of important, because this is where you would list any emergency contact. And if a person is not on your emergency contact list, they can't pick up your student. So you need to think about all the possibilities that might happen. Now, we do some, if you have a real emergency, we try to work with you, but we also verify that it's you and that we know this person. But the basic go-to is to look at your emergency contact list. So that's an important one to make sure you've updated. Here's an example of what we envision for the traffic flow for the gate entrance if you're dropping your student off. And I've seen a preliminary list of people's intentions, and there are a lot of people planning to bring your students in. So if you are, and your student is in fourth, fifth, I guess even second or third, this would be the loop to drop off. And if they go in the main entrance, they will have to walk that stretch of the sidewalk to go to the main entrance and then go in the building. So if you're there at drop-off time, you can just drop them off like we normally would, and they enter the building. This is the flagpole entrance loop. This is actually the standard one that we ran all last year. We didn't have the other one. Well, so if your student is going in the flagpole entrance, they will also have to walk down the sidewalk to the main entrance, but they can be dropped right here for the flagpole entrance. The bus lane, we need to keep clear because of what I described with the staggered arrival. They'll be coming in at different times, and right when they come in, we're going to unload them. So we're not going to line them up and then have an official bus time where they're gone, and then you can drive up and drop your student off. We won't be able to do that, I'm pretty sure, anymore, but at the very least when we get started. So we need to keep the bus lane clear. Okay, so this part is also, the rationale for this makes complete sense, and it is so that we don't have a big disaster on day one if we were to try to bring everybody in and find out part of our planning doesn't quite work. There's a lot that we're going to find out by actually beginning to bring students in. And based on that, we're going to have a gradual student in-person start. All students will begin learning activity on September 14th. But all students do not begin in-person attendance on the same date. And inherent in this, before I go to the next slide, we need to get iPads out to everybody so that they're able to participate right on the first day. Here's the breakdown. Again, this is another visual that we will probably send to everybody, and I don't think I have a mistake in here, but I'm going to double check that again after. But on the 14th, the only people attending in person will be grade 3 cohort A for Chase, only for Chase, Crowfoot, Franzone, and all of kindergarten. Then we're in order to see the next group, the next cohort to join in will be on that Thursday, the 17th. It'll be grade 3, cohort B. We will still have kindergarten. All of this is adding every time. Now, cohort A will be home. See how it gets confusing? The more you say about it, the more it can be confusing. But it's always adding, and it's if it's a day you're planning to attend, that everyone's planning for you to attend. So you see then the 21st, grade 1, cohort A, grade 4, cohort A. We're going 1 and 4. That Thursday, it's 1 and 4 coming in again, but cohort B this time. The next one is the 29th. The 28th is a holiday. So grade 2, cohort A will come in, and grade 5, cohort A. And then October 1st, grade 2, cohort B, and grade 5, cohort B comes in. After that, it's Monday, Tuesday for cohort A, Thursday, Friday for cohort B. Mrs. Crowfoot's class, Mrs. Franzone's class, and all of kindergarten right now are all 4 of those days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Again, Wednesday, everybody's home. This should allow us to phase in and get the processes that we're going to do, including food services, transportation, all of the arrangements for that, specials rotation and such. We'll make sure we have it done well. But all students will do learning activities starting on the 14th. It just may be remote. Cohort D is full remote, excuse me. Those students, again, they begin on September 14th also. Scheduling, just a little bit quick on it. We're going to follow the regular instructional guidelines for math, ELA, science, and social studies. The students will still have 1 special per day within the classroom or outside when they're attending in person, and otherwise it will exist remotely. Specials are rotated for equity between in-person and remote experience. This is kind of a deep topic, but basically it boils down to we can't have PE for a group landing on every Tuesday for them, that they always have PE, and they're in cohort A, so they would always have physical education in person. That wouldn't be equity if very often they end up having music remotely 5 weeks in a row. So in order to fix that, we have a special rotation. We will put out a calendar with it and try to explain it to everyone, but we have it pretty equitable right now. And when they're on remote, it's very often it's going to be a standing remote assignment that gets or a task that gets submitted. It could be as we go down the road, there's more and more of a specialist teacher interacting with the students, but it's not going to be a live special interaction. Intervention, occupational therapies, physical therapy, speech, guidance counseling, counseling with the social worker, or any other service similar to that will still all be happening. Many times it might be remote, but especially for things like occupational therapy and physical therapy, it will be happening when the student is in person. iPads will be issued to each student. So that's something to plan for. Plan for them to go back and forth from home and school. If they're only attending 2 days, it's really just best to get in the habit of a student coming in every day and going home with their iPad. And you never know if all of a sudden it's going to be called that we're going to act remotely for a little while, and then they already have their iPad with them. Also, it would be great, I know from personal experience at home, if they can work on their charging habits. It'll be nice if when they do come in person, their iPad is already charged. Otherwise, we will have arrangements to charge in the classroom, but it will just be better if we can strive for that. One thing that we've decided we want to add to a materials list, which will be going out to people soon, is personal earbuds. Anything you have that has the 8-inch plug that can plug into an iPad for students to use, especially if you can imagine a classroom where you may have the kids on the iPads for a time being. We're going to get to that in just a second. It will cut down on the chaos if we don't have all the iPads going out loud. Okay, here's the model that we have put into our plan. It's actually in our official plan that went to the state. We are using a very common model. It's station rotation for when we're in school, and it's remote instruction, obviously, for when the students are remote. all of this is very familiar, but there really is a strong element I want to point out. So the station rotation has teacher-led instruction. It also has collaborative activities, which means between the students in groups of different sizes. It also includes an element of them actually participating in some online activity while they're in class. Now, that may be counterintuitive. First of all, let me say in-person instruction will have all of those three things: teacher-led, collaborative, and online activity. It's very much like we've always done anyways. It is. The online activity with the classroom, within the classroom, so when they're there using the online activity, that will be a good bridge for when the students are online at home. That's something we did not have in the spring. It is big. The fact that I will see the students for 2 days and then I will set them for 3 days of independent learning, and I have a chance to set them up for that. That is a huge difference from now and what we're talking about to what happened in the spring. Remote days for hybrid attendance. We want to have a synchronous and asynchronous element to those remote days. We're working out how that will all happen. However, it will lean towards asynchronous, but we will have synchronous elements happening. Specifics for all remote learning. Some of that will depend on the number of students we have participating in the all remote learning cohort. So we're still waiting to see how we will accomplish that. It may be that we have so many, for example, that we actually have a dedicated teacher for that function. Or if it's very few, then we may not. How will instruction be different from spring 2020, which, by the way, was great and done quickly, and teachers responded tremendously to that, and they developed their skills. Some already had an experience with technology, and they helped the other teachers that may not have. So it was great, but it's going to be even better in the fall. The first thing I'll mention is that consistent accountability of in-person attendance. If you think about it, in the spring, if a student, it's almost like skipping class. The first day, it's a little difficult. The second day is a little easier. By the fourth day, you are not going to class. This was happening for some students because they knew they were not going to be held accountable. But in our system, if we're in the hybrid system where a student is going to come 2 days out of the week, they know they're coming back in. There will be a level of pressure on the students to make sure they keep up with what they're doing. So it's not just during that day that they would have contact with the teacher or a person from the school, but they also know they're going to be back in on their attendance days. And that will be big. It's a lot different from knowing that you're not coming back for weeks at a time. In-person socialization. That really didn't happen in the spring. It's a great big difference between then and now. We're going to see them at least in person twice a week. And they're going to see other students. And the extent to which that happened also in the spring, maybe some students saw other students often, but some may have not seen anybody. So the level of socialization will be much different. The purposeful use of online learning when they're in school. So again, this was what I was just alluding to. When they're in school, we will be able to have them on the learning platform, that whether they're using Teams or Seesaw, or even, I suppose, another program that they're using for specific instruction, we will be able to get them started or help them see in person a lot of how something works. Then we set them off for their 3 days that will be remote. It's much different than what we had in the spring. That's what that next item was. Standardized learning platforms. We didn't really have learning platforms completely standardized. Everybody had a different familiarity with them in the spring. Now we're at a point where it's K2 planning to use Seesaw, and 3-5 will transition to Teams as they go through, but also there's discussion about how Seesaw and Teams may be nested and used in the 3-5 as they move towards middle school. And the last item to mention is just experience. So everybody in school, all the staff, teachers, have much more experience in all of this. We've been talking about it and reading about it all summer. We experienced what we experienced in the spring, and we're looking to just make things better as we go on. I can tell you my personal goal that I've been telling myself at this point is we want to get so good at remote learning that when we're finally able to come back in person, it's going to not even be a thought that we still need to have a remote element to learning, because we're going to realize what can be done with it. Attendance, simple in-person attendance. When you're in person, if you're there, you get marked present. If you're late, it'll be very much like it has been. You'll come through the main lobby. If it's early dismiss, again, we'll dismiss from the main lobby for those situations. Remote attendance criteria, we're still talking about that. In fact, I have a meeting on Monday about how are we going to consider someone to have attended on a Thursday that maybe they're remote. They're supposed to be remote. So we are going to talk about that, but I think there's going to be a lot of accountability present that was not present in the spring that will help with attendance when students are remote. So the details will come forward on that. Options. Oh, if there's a person who's supposed to be in person, meaning a student who is supposed to attend in person, and they're sick, or for whatever reason they cannot attend, or maybe they're on quarantine, heaven forbid, whatever reason, if they're able to participate at home, we may visit that on a case-to-case basis and make a decision of that we can count them as present by them participating remotely. Food services, a lot of information here, but let me run through it a bit. We're going to have grab-and-go breakfasts brought to the student pod, and as the students arrive, they can have their breakfast and eat their breakfast right there, very much like they would have done normally. It's just they won't go to the food service line. Parents, one big difference in our operation with food, we will no longer really have snack day, where one student brings in snack for everyone in the classroom, and then the next day it's someone else, and so on. What you would do instead, we're recommending you will send individual snacks only for your student. We will have individually wrapped snacks to provide for any student that doesn't have a snack on any day. Then we go to lunch. Lunch will be brought to each student pod. We'll actually collect lunch numbers in the morning, and we will bring the lunches to the student pods in a similar way for grab and go. They'll eat in their classroom at their fixed distance. Same with the breakfast, by the way. They have to be at their fixed distance to not have their mask on, and you can't eat with a mask on. Food services, by the way, is still and will be delivering food, as has been taking place this summer. Adjustments based on the survey numbers may happen, and adjustments based on what cohort that a student may be in. If they're in cohort A, then we may not be bringing food to that location on that day. They're still working that out, and a lot of it depends on information that comes in the survey. Also, food services, food allergies. We will definitely attend to food allergies, and very much like we usually would do, we will communicate with the school nurse who has an allergy list. We, being the administrators, the classroom teacher will be aware of any student's allergy. Food services will be aware of any student's allergy, and the staff that will bring the food down, or may also be the monitoring staff for the student lunch, will be aware of food allergies. So through all of that system, which is basically how we have done things in the past, we will attend to anyone's food allergies, and we just need to make sure that you have let the nurse know that you have a situation. We have a couple of non-nut rooms in school where we don't have tree nuts or peanuts or things like that. So we will be attending to allergies. Behavior expectations. So basically we have the standard code of conduct, and in the code of conduct there are items about safety and endangering the welfare of others and things of that nature. So we basically can run the standard code of conduct, but if there's anything that needs to be done as normal, parents will be notified immediately. but especially now we add in the layer of that we're asking students to wear masks. We need them to allow us to take their temperature. I don't really foresee much of this being an issue, especially at the elementary level. We will work with them on distancing, and it's not just that we think they're automatically already know all about it. We will be teaching them and instructing students on what we mean by all of this. Hygiene practices, and then there could be all the other normal code of conduct issues. But if we have a student who for some reason is very chronic in infractions that involve health and safety related to COVID-19 precautions, we'll meet this with consequences that progress as we normally would, depending on the severity of the situation. And a possible result for chronic and or severe infractions, if they keep happening with the same student, or if it's the first time and it's really bad, I can't really imagine what that might be, but a possible consequence would be that we're going to reassign that student to be full remote cohort D, either for a period of time, well, it would be a period of time one way or the other. Informed choices by families. So parent enrollment forms have been distributed. They are due by Saturday, August 15th. This information will really help us plan some of the other details that I've mentioned earlier in the presentation. This Zoom meeting is being recorded, so I feel like I definitely have talked a lot, but if you want to see it over to check different pieces of information, it will be up on the web so that you can replay it. And there will be more information to get out. This is basically the start of our information campaign where we're starting to get things out for people. And basically we are a month away from our intended start day of school. So I feel like we have some time, but we don't have forever. Parents learning enrollment for fall 2020. Okay, so if you need to get a hold of the enrollment form to submit, you can either contact the office or submit your wishes by paper right here at the office and we will submit it for you. Or you can go to monticelloschools.net and there is a link there to take you right to the enrollment form and fill it out. This will help us plan accordingly, and it's not an optional kind of survey. We're going to be calling you. We need to know from everybody what your intention is. So please spread the word. We need to know what you're planning for your student. And starting on Monday, we're going to see whose information do we have. And if we don't have yours, we're going to need to call and get the information from you. More information that'll come out, things like specific bus routes and times. We won't have that yet. Cohort designations, we won't have that yet. Classroom teachers for in-person attendance. We won't be able to tell you who a teacher is for students until we see who's planning to come in person and who is not. And that way we can balance the classes better. Staffing for full remote students. If we have a lot of full remote students, we may actually have a dedicated teacher to cover that. But we're not sure yet until we get that information. We are talking about kindergarten orientation activity. That's huge. We didn't get to do screening in the spring. We didn't have our orientation days in the spring and take a bus ride. So we have things to do between now and the 14th to make sure our brand new students are ready to come to school. Before and after care program. Currently when we start, we are not having a before and after care program. It may be something that phases in. I think we also need to attend to where the funding is coming from. But if things go well, it will be something that I picture us opening up and offering eventually. It's just not at the start. Clubs and after school activities, the same thing. Very much anything that you might have, if it's Cub Scouts or something like that, you will need to make arrangements for virtual meetings. Morning music possibilities. I was just discussing that this morning with Mr. Palmer. They're going to see about trying to arrange something remotely, at least for 5th grade instruments, but nothing is definite right yet, and it is not happening like it used to. One thing, Census 2020, it is our civic duty. It makes sure that our region is represented correctly, and also that appropriate funding comes to schools and hospitals and fire departments, and I'm sure a million other things. It's very important that you go to 2020census.gov. I think my wife did it for our whole family. She did it on her phone, and it took her about 5 or 6 minutes to accomplish, and it was done. So if you haven't done it yet, take the time, please. It's important. All right, the end came up quick for me here. So thank you for joining us for this parent informational meeting. I put as much as I could into this, and remember that it will be, this presentation will be on the web, available to watch again to get other information. Dr. Evans, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I will just very briefly thank you, Mr. Frandino, for a very thorough and a complete presentation of how return to instruction will look in the fall at Chase. And I want to thank you and Ms. Gallant and your staff for working hard to get these plans where they are today. As most of you know, the State Education Department and the Department of Health did not release guidance documents until I think the 3rd week in July. So our staff have been working rather furiously since then to get these plans to where they are today. And so I do appreciate that sincerely. I want to just underscore the need for all of us to take the appropriate steps to maintain and monitor our health and the health of our children and our families. If your child is sick, exhibiting symptoms, he or she should stay home. If your child has a temperature of 100 degrees or greater, he or she should stay home and should receive medical attention for that. And the reason I underscore that is, and Mr. Frandino, you had a slide in there, the sooner that we're able to reestablish systems, the more students will be able to take on gradually through time. And we're going to do that in a very careful manner. And the quicker we'll get back to normal. But right now, we are required to do a great many things like maintain social distancing, screen students and staff when they come to school in the morning to make sure they're not running temperatures and they haven't been in contact with COVID positive cases. And all of these things have other effects. So those things affect before and after school programs, because in order to do those programs, we have to do a cleaning of where an individual student was. So if a student is using a particular classroom, when that student's done with that classroom, in order for us to allow another student to use that space, that desk needs to be cleaned. Further, with the Empire program, not only is that kind of cleaning related, that's also state funding related. That is a state funded program. And some of you may have heard the governor talk about the economic crisis in New York State. And we don't know exactly yet the extent to which that Empire grant will be funded by the state. So there's still a lot that we're not able to do yet that we'd like to do. We'd like to get as many students in person as possible, but we need to do that safely. We need to do that in a manner consistent with the guidelines put out by the Centers for Disease Control, the New York State Department of Health, and the New York State Education Department. So I'll stick around for questions that may come my way, Mr. Frandino. If you want to throw them to me, I'd be happy to take them. But looking forward to a successful school year, and I wish everyone well and enjoy the rest of your summer. So, Mr. Frandino.
Yes, so I guess I'm going to let Ms. Bonfante lead us in questions.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everybody. And again, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Frandino and Dr. Evans have said. I thank you for joining us tonight. Our assistant principal, Mrs. Gallant, she is operating this evening under Ginny in the chat room, has been answering quite a few of your questions. So I highly encourage you to check out the chat room to see if your question has been answered. I've divided the questions that have not been answered thus far into different sections, and I'm going to continue to do so that we can try to keep this flowing. So Mr. Frandino, I know that you've already said this, but I just want to reiterate because it's a couple of folks are asking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any idea yet about the times that the school will be in session, pickup, drop-off times, bus routes, etc.? What do we have that information just yet?
I can give you a rough idea. For example, the start of the student day is supposed to be 9:20 for Chase. And I should have had that on. That's a good question. The end of the student day, or the buses, would depart at about 4:02. Now, those are really approximate times because I am not sure how the impact of staggered bus arrival and staggered dismissal is going to impact that time. There's always a little bit of flux at the very beginning of the year for a week or two, and then it tightens up and gets to be very regular. So definitely focus around student arrival, being the start of the day would be 9:20, and the buses would tend to leave about 4:02, but I would say it could be 20 minutes before or after each of those times, especially when we first begin. And as that information comes in from the surveys, and then we do the more concrete planning based on that, we will be able to get more accurate with our times.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the academic questions. So if a child, can you speak a little bit to what instruction is going to look like for students whose parents are working? If are teachers going to be flexible on assignment deadlines for students who may have to submit later in the day because they don't have their parents at home to assist them? Can the work be done later in the day?
The simple answer is yes. So yes, we're getting more and more used to doing remote learning, and the nature of having assignments due. Even at home, in my personal experiences, I realized the stress that is now on my own children when they have 10 things due, and naturally it was due all week and they procrastinated and waited until Thursday night and it's due on Friday. We don't want that happening. So we're going to do as much from our end to make sure that we pace out the work so that students don't procrastinate to the last minute. Also, if they're in the hybrid model, it will be much easier because they will be in 2 of the 5 days and then out only 3. I mean, I say only, it sounds like a lot, it definitely is, but in that system, it's better than not being in at all. That starts to become more and more difficult depending on the communication with the family. So we are going to watch out for all of that. We don't want anyone to be penalized in any way because of a situation where your parent may not be there to help you, or you have assistance. And the due dates, especially if we have multiple teachers having something due, we want to make sure they don't line up and have something due on the same date. So we're going to do as much as we can to watch out for that. And if we mess up, just call and we'll make the adjustment.
Okay. If somebody has already filled out the survey and signed up for a cohort, are they able to change it at this time?
Yes, because I thought, especially for Chase, since our presentation wasn't until tonight, that may impact people's thinking. I can tell you right now, I actually will not be in tomorrow. I have a couple of doctor's appointments, so I will not be in tomorrow. But you could call and leave a message, or you can wait until Monday and call in, and we will get the changes done so that your data gets through to the system.
Okay. How will collaborative learning look and be implemented during in-person instruction time? Will there be groups, distancing, shared materials and spaces?
It will be distancing and masks. Something that I had in my notes that I didn't mention before is that wearing a mask is not a substitute for social distancing. And social distancing within the building is not a substitute for wearing a mask. We will lock in the distances when we're eating, but otherwise we want masks and distancing both as much as possible. The only exception, the reason I say as much as possible, is because if they go outside and they're able to maintain 6 feet under mild conditions or 12 feet under aerobic activity, they can remove their mask. But other than that, plan on masks, plan on distancing. So for collaborative working, the students will be distanced. It's actually 6 feet is not as far as it seems. If you're a distance away, you can still hold the conversation. And don't forget, the classrooms will have half of the density of students than they normally have. So when you're picturing it, it's not a full classroom of kids that you're trying to get 6 feet apart. It may be 10 students. and they are grouped up or at a separate area. It may be less than that in some instances. So a lot of that, we really, I feel like in many topics, I'm getting to the level of, I'm not sure about specifics until we get people in to do it. But that's what we're intending to have happen.
Will all related services be provided in person if a student is attending the hybrid model?
If that's what's requested, yes. I could see opportunity where something like a counseling conversation could be geared and not so bad if we were to do something like that remotely. But if you didn't want to do that, we would make the arrangements, make sure it happens on in-person days. We also don't want to load someone's in-person days up with a lot of related services. We also want them to have plenty of classroom time. So we will work that out on a case-by-case basis. If you want it in person, we'll arrange for it to be in person.
Do we know when the teacher assignment and supply lists will be sent out?
We are working on supply lists to adjust things and consider. For example, the earbuds I would like to have added to everyone's supply list. However, some of the other things I'm also feeling, you know, I know most all of you, I'm feeling like I don't want to be the reason to send a bunch of people out to buy things. So I really want people to consider what are the items we would like to have students provide. We wouldn't let anybody go without crayons or scissors or glue or tape or any of that. So we are doing that work right now. In fact, I sent an email out earlier today about this very topic. And when we get them refined, we're going to send them out. And it should be within 2 weeks that we will send them out. We're also trying to have grade level consistency, make sure that 2 teachers within the same grade, we have the exact same supply list. There was an earlier part of your question, though, I think I missed. Oh, teacher assignments was what it was.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No, we don't know yet what they will be because we're not sure which students are planning to attend in person, which may be opting to do full remote, and we want to be able to balance the classes. You know, at Chase, it's kind of easy. There's only 2 at every grade for the most part. However, I have neglected to add into this when we talk about kindergarten attending. In fact, I guess that would have been a question. How is that possible? It's because we've doubled the number of kindergarten classes. So we're going to have 4 kindergarten classes. That way, those students can attend all 4 of the attendance days, and we've still cut the numbers down. So we have Mrs. Colitis, Mrs. O'Rourke, Mrs. Van Etten, and Mrs. Yorks. They will be the 4 kindergarten teachers.
Do we have a time frame for when parents will receive the school calendar?
I don't know, but when it will be sent out, but I do know that it is in process of being printed because we finalized some dates. Dr. Evans, you might know more about that.
The final proof is waiting for my signature. That will be sent to the printer tomorrow. We wanted to give it as much time as we possibly could. So that will be sent to the printer tomorrow to begin printing. But we do expect it to be back before the start of student return on September 14th.
And I just want to cut in and add that likely before you have the calendar in your mailboxes, it will probably be uploaded in a digital format on the Google Calendar on our website. So please feel free to continue to check back on our website. We do typically get those dates up on the website before they're printed. So the next question is, as far as remote learning goes, will students receive worksheets? Or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Will worksheets be sent home for all remote learning, or is everything going to be done on the iPad exclusively?
It will be a mix. It won't be all iPad. There will be some paper, pencil. We'll see about printing, for example, even reading samples so that students might read a passage or a story and then be able to write. Even if the writing's on the iPad, the reading can be in paper. So nothing is out of bounds for this, and we're not saying that we're restricting everything to purely to iPad use.
Okay, so if a parent has two children in different schools, will they be considered to be in the same cohort?
Yes, it might be a good idea to point it out to the principals so we can make sure it's happening, but it's been brought up, and I know transportation is using that as one of the factors when they are figuring out what the cohorts could possibly be that also go along with an efficient bus route. If they're siblings, they're definitely going to be in the same cohort, but it wouldn't hurt to help us to make sure we don't mess up on that.
If a parent chooses a specific cohort and then decides it's not a good fit, when or will they have the option to switch the child into a different cohort?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember on the survey if we're asking for a commitment of the quarter or a semester. Dr. Evans, do you happen to recall what length of time we're looking for a commitment?
Yes, I believe it's a semester. However, it would be much easier to, if a parent signed up for and the student was enrolled in cohort A or B, for example, or even cohort C, and the parent believed that, no, I'd rather pull my kid out for remote learning only and bring him or her into cohort D, that would be a switch we could probably accommodate. Going the other way, meaning starting out remote learning in cohort D in September and then saying, I want to put my kid into cohort A and B later on, might be a more difficult switch. We just have to kind of see how it's going. But right now we are asking for a semester's commitment. So the first half of the year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will students in cohort D, which is the fully remote learning cohort, will they have access to library books through the school library?
Probably not in the traditional way, and I don't think any students will. We're not planning to really be checking out the books in the library. We may bring class sets to a classroom, and they may be used, and then they may stay there even for the entire year, and then at some point come back to the library. It won't be a weekly rotation like you might have been used to, but we do have some resources that we have permissions to photocopy from if we need to send appropriate reading material home for different things. So, and that would include students that are remote as well as students that are in the hybrid cohorts. So no, it won't be quite like what you're used to, but we'll be doing what we can in terms of photocopying or providing online access to things. I know there's a reading, what is it, Reading ABC or something that many times we have some subscriptions to that we have permission to do different things with, as well as our reading programs.
Okay, so my next group of questions is about health and safety. I'm going to switch gears and go to this group. Will contact tracing include all children on the same bus as a potential positive COVID person with COVID, confirmed case of COVID?
Yes.
Okay, can you speak a little bit to the type of ventilation that classrooms will have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ventilation has come up a bunch of times, and I know that facilities has and regularly goes through to check ventilation. The situation with ventilation is that there is not an increased amount of ventilation that needs to be attended to, but the ventilation that you do have installed, according to code, needs to be working correctly. So they have been checking all the ventilation is working correctly, and that's what I basically know about ventilation.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Frandino. So yeah, that's correct. There were no new additional requirements put out by the Department of Health or the CDC or the New York State Education Department regarding ventilation systems. So nothing was required of schools to upgrade their ventilation systems other than, as Mr. Frandino said, making sure whatever was required of that school's ventilation system was up to code. So it had suggestions like opening up windows when possible. There's speculation and some debate about, should we put fans in rooms? Because there's, some idea that, perhaps that might enhance the circulation of the virus as well as the circulation of clean air. So if you look in the Department of Health guidelines and the State Education Department guidelines, it really basically says that organizations should make sure their things are up to code. Now, I want to take a step back and talk about the contact tracing question. It depends. And what I mean by that is we're following the lead of the Sullivan County Public Health Department. I had a very good meeting yesterday with the Department of Public Health and a follow-up conversation this morning with Nancy McGraw. And they're setting up a kind of a hotline, if you will, between school nurses and the nurse responders at Sullivan County Public Health. So that if a student comes off a bus or if a staff member comes in and is symptomatic, that they will be speaking directly with a nurse at Public Health for further guidance. So what that might mean is an individual might have some very low-grade symptoms like a sore throat. The school nurse will talk that over with a nurse at Public Health, and that nurse at Public Health will make an assessment at that time on that student. Conversely, a student may come off the bus with a 100-degree fever. That student is definitely going home. And the consultation with the nurse at the Public Health Department might mean you need to contact other parents and isolate other students or what have you. So a lot of that right now is case, as I understand it, is case dependent. However, any student who comes in with a temperature of 100 degrees or greater will be going home. Any student coming in symptomatic will be going home. And they will be isolated while we wait for the parent to pick them up. The extent to which contact tracing starts at that point will be dictated by the Sullivan County Department of Public Health. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that relative to contact tracing. But either way, a symptomatic student comes in, he or she will be isolated or staff member at that time. Okay.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And will students be required to have a COVID test in order to return to school if they're found to have either a temperature or symptoms of COVID?
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead, because I know that very often we're going to take the situation, get as much information as we can, and then consult with the local health department about the details. But go ahead, Dr. Evans.
Yeah, so if the student goes home because he or she is symptomatic, in the case of students who have a degree of a fever of 100 or more, they need to get medical attention. They're sick. Something is not right there. If they are symptomatic with a cold, like cold-like symptoms without a fever, they still have to be able to answer no to those questions on that questionnaire in order to be admitted. So you will see things on there like symptoms within the past 14 days. What happens sometimes is if an individual is sick, he or she goes to get medical treatment. What local doctors are doing now is if there's a fever, if there is a bad cold or body aches, anything that is remotely symptomatic of COVID, the medical professionals are administering a COVID-19 test. They're telling the individual to quarantine, and they're telling them to quarantine until the test results come back. So we strongly recommend that in this current environment we're in, if your child is symptomatic or has a fever, get medical treatment, and the doctors will probably administer a COVID test at that time. And sometimes that COVID test will come back within like 3 or 4 days. And if it comes back negative and the student is no longer symptomatic, then the student could present that note and be readmitted. Okay, so we're strongly encouraging parents to, if you have children who are sick, and I'm a parent too, I know what that entails sometimes with work and everything else, to get them the medical treatment that they need. But again, to echo Mr. Frandino's original statement here, we are going to be following guidance and discussions with Sullivan County Department of Public Health.
Thank you.
Okay, my next question is about mask breaks. Can you talk a little bit about what those will look like, specifically where the children will be when they take mask breaks, whether they'll be seated at the desk or in another space?
Well, within the classroom, we would want the students need to be at the fixed distance location where we know they're 6 feet apart. That would include for eating. But even if we're just taking a mask break, so Mr. Frandino might say to the class, okay, we're going to get ready for a mask break, everybody at their fixed location. I put some music on and I say, all right, we're gonna do some breathing activities, or for meditation or whatever they're going to do, and they can take their mask off during that time. And hopefully, again, it's brief. It should be 5 minutes or less for the break. But also, we could have students that a class, the teacher takes the students outside. You still have to maintain the distancing, but they can take their masks off outside during that time. We've also envisioned the courtyard, if you're familiar with the building, that something like that could happen in the courtyard. It could be, if we're still extending these things into the winter and it's colder weather, it could be that we're making use of one side of the gymnasium. It's a very large area. We could at least maintain 6 feet for a mask break in there. So there are lots of options, but those things, the distance would have to exist in order for the mask break to occur. I anticipate we would have many breaks, including just the act of eating, whether it be breakfast or lunch, is going to be kind of like having a mask break.
Okay, so under what circumstances will school close?
I'm going to let Dr. Evans field this one, because I'm not positive. There'll be a lot of decision making by different people that won't be me.
The superintendent will make that determination, or the governor. So the data that we're monitoring are rates of local infection. And again, going back to my meeting yesterday with the Sullivan County Department of Public Health, they will be providing us with those data as needed. I believe in our region, that rate, the region is pretty big, right? It's like the Mid-Hudson region. I believe that rate of 7-day average infection rate is around 0.8%. You've heard the governor talk about anything 5% or greater, there should be closings considered. And then at 9%, things would absolutely be shut down. That's what the governor has stated. There is not, other than the governor's comments, there's not explicit guidance or, firm numbers from the Department of Health or the State Education Department saying schools shall close on. And you heard the governor last week when he made his announcement say those are going to be local decisions. So things that I would be looking at are the rates of local infection, and also the rates at particular school levels. So if, for example, Chase Elementary School had several different COVID positive cases that resulted in significant numbers of students or staff being quarantined, I might consider closing there, or throughout the district, depending on how deep those positive results are. Now, keep in mind, things are going to be different here forward relative to school closing, because while in-person instruction might be closed, remote learning will most likely continue on those days in which schools are closed. So even though schools are closed, and that will happen in the winter, there will ultimately be snow days. They will not be snow days as we once knew them. They will be snow days where remote learning will continue. So those are, I think that's the question you're asking is, when might we close for in-person instruction? And those are the things that I would consider. That, along with plumbing issues, electricity issues, major weather events, but most likely those will result in remote learning days.
Just as a quick follow-up question, Dr. Evans, will the actions of other schools, so if schools that surround us decide to close, will that have any impact on our decision to close?
Only if there were infection rates that affected our populations. So I guess if there were situations where there was a potential for spread into our district, so obviously Monticello is very close to Fallsburg, Liberty, and even other districts outside of the BOCES, like Port Jervis, for example. So those things that I would like to make its own local determination on that, just because there might be a small outbreak in a place like Roscoe, for example. That doesn't necessarily mean that Monticello would close.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, Mr. Frandino, the next couple of questions I have are miscellaneous questions.
Okay.
Will the school, so the lunch that's being delivered to the classroom, is that hot lunch, or is that going to be a grab and go such as the ones that they're getting for breakfast?
I'm told that will be a hot lunch. And we're already planning for transport of the lunches to the area. I actually was speaking today about that. So it will be hot lunch unless for some reason the dish is a cold dish. But in general, it'll be just like they're used to, just transported to the room.
Okay, and then will the survey data be available, the survey for the enrollment, will that data be available after Monday with the names removed? Names or other identifying information removed?
I don't know to what extent the total survey information will be released, and I know that by Monday it won't be done. It's due Saturday, but we're going to be tracking down any that we haven't heard from, and then we'll have more complete information during the week next week, most likely. And I don't know to what extent anyone is planning on putting that information out. I bet very general numbers, such as what percentage has chosen cohort D or things like that, I bet they'll be readily available.
Thank you, Mr. Frandino. So as of this moment, I'm not seeing any questions that have not either been answered or addressed during this session. I do want to remind everybody who's joined us this evening that this is being recorded, and we will be adding the video to our website and on our YouTube channel for you to reference in the future. Mr. Frandino, do you have any ending thoughts or closing thoughts?
No, just I want to thank everyone. I've been feeling like I wanted to make sure we're getting information out. I've been knowing that people wanted to know different things, but I think we're just at a point right now where we can start getting some of our plan out to people. There will be additional information, especially as we tighten things up when we know about the parent-informed choices and so on. But I'm glad to have met with everyone. I'm glad we have a strong turnout. And I thank you for all the support I'm feeling from the teachers and from our families. And we are working on things, and we've been doing an awful lot for the past 6 to 8 weeks at the very least. And we're at a point to start sharing some things, but definitely new information will come out where we can try to fill in some of the details that people are asking about. So thank you. Dr. Evans, do you want to close the meeting?
I'll leave that to you. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight, and we're looking forward to a successful and healthy school year. Back to you, Mr. Fran, and thank you, Ms. Bonfante and Ms. Gallant, who have been moderating tonight, and Mr. Wagner out there as well. Back to you, Bill.
All right. Yes, thank you to Ms. Bonfante and Mrs. Gallant and Mr. Wagner also, and thank you, Dr. Evans, for helping with a bunch of the questions. And we'll still be here, and really starting tomorrow, we have a month before our planned starting date. So you can always call or email in other questions you have. Things will start to take more form next week, and we'll be getting additional information out. So thank you. Have a good night.